What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the OddsShopper channel. And today I'm talking college basketball bets ahead of Monday, February the 27th. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a rating and review over there too. And we are debuting a brand new betting show on OddsShopper. This is at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and it goes through all of the major bets of the day, featuring hosts like Laffy, Greg, Ben, everybody you know and love. But just going to go through the bets of the night using the tools we have on OddsShopper and try to give you the best edges possible. Won't affect this show. We'll still have this show in the morning talking about college basketball specifically. And speaking of betting, we also have a phenomenal no-brainer and limited time offer for you guys from DraftKings, where you can bet $5 on any pre-game money line. And if that bet wins, you are turning that $5 into $150. So what I recommend is just go over, look at the board, find your biggest favorite, and take them on the money line. There's actually not a ton of massive favorites tonight overall in the grand scheme of college basketball. So if you're looking at one, it's probably North Carolina over Florida State. That's an 8-point spread. Again, it's a short slate on a Monday for first things first. And then North Carolina being an 8-point favorite, that's about as big as it gets. You'll take them on the money line. If they win, you turn that $5 into $150. To take advantage of this, you can click the link in the video description below. Make your first deposit of at least $5. Then go ahead and make that pregame money line wager. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. The legal betting age in most states is 21 plus. All right, we move forward. And I was gone this weekend, so we emerged from the woods. It's Monday, the 27th, and a very special day in college basketball. It's the start of conference tournaments. The ASUN tips off tonight. We have Selection Sunday 2 weeks from yesterday, and let's kick things off. We're going to start with more of a premier game, at least a Power 6 game, as we should say. Baylor takes on Oklahoma State. Right now, this is about a 1-point spread in favor of Baylor, despite being on the road. And money's coming on Oklahoma State. Last night, Keontae George was ruled out for Baylor, so I think that's mostly why the money's coming on them, which is music to my ears because Baylor's a team we've been buying really for 3 to 4 weeks now, and Oklahoma State's been a team we've been trying to sell, and there's a lot of reasons why. They can't figure out how to play their best players. They're on a 4-game losing streak, some of them closer than others, but that includes losses to Kansas, TCU, West Virginia, and Kansas State. And things aren't getting any easier for them. The main factor here is that they do return home. That is big. They just lost to Kansas State at home, though. But ultimately, how much does the Keontae George injury matter? So you can go over to evanmaya.com, look at Bayesian performance rating of these players, and see how much they're actually worth. Because Baylor, without Keontae George, is important, but the backup to him is actually Langston Love, who is a really solid player himself. If you were just looking at the drop-offs at every position for the starting lineup of Baylor, this is about the least impactful injury you could possibly have. It doesn't affect your ball handler in Flagler, doesn't affect your shooting guard in Cryer, doesn't affect the big man with JTT or Flo Thamba or Bridges. You go from Keontae George to Langston Love. It's about as little of a drop-off as you could possibly have for losing a guy that is maybe going to be an NBA lottery pick. But we go to the advanced metrics, and again, I don't think it's going to be too different now that we have this difference, but Baylor, clear offensive efficiency edge. Their three-point shooting is the best facet of their game, with Cryer and Flagler, both awesome three-point shooters. Their defense has gotten better with Chama Chachua back, and the interior edge that Oklahoma State generally has, I think, is mitigated a little bit by the return of Chama Chachua and just having Flo Thamba there. And we talked about Bayesian performance rating and the drop-off from George to Love. Oklahoma State deserves no credit whatsoever for failing. Essentially, they failed to get their best players on the floor. The number one player for this team analytically is Moussa Cisse. Now, Cisse did deal with an injury around the midpoint of the season. He's come back, but he's never playing more than 24 minutes a game. He's basically fluctuating between 19, 23, 21, playing half the game. And he is clearly their best player, especially on the defensive end. So the inability of Oklahoma State to get their best player on the floor, the drop off from George to Love being not that great, I'm going to go with Baylor here. This is one I think you can wait on. You might even find Baylor as like a pick 'em if you wait till tip off. But Baylor's going to be the side, -1, -1.5. If it goes the other way, completely fine with those numbers. Going to our second game, we go to the aforementioned A-Sun tournament. And unfortunately, the Queen's logo is just like the same color as our background, so you can't see it. Maybe you can, barely. Anyway, we have Florida Gulf Coast +3 against Queens. This is on a neutral floor, so home court does not come into play here. But the first game, Queens won in spectacular fashion. I mean, it was a really close game, good game between these teams first times they played, 84-82. The big difference is here is you basically have a more balanced team in Florida Gulf Coast. Queens is strong offensively, but they can't stop a nosebleed. They also play a weird style of basketball we'll talk about here. But overall, if you look at like KenPom's power ratings, you have Gulf Coast 181st, Queens is 215th. And I think the big keys in this game are going to be the Queens press and their lack of height. You know, this is a team making the jump to Division I, and they've outperformed expectations. But it's kind of a stylistic nightmare against Gulf Coast. Again, Queens presses a ton. Well, unfortunately, Florida Gulf Coast is a team that does not struggle with turnovers at all. Got great ball handling, and they're 62nd in turnovers committed. That's, you know, a top 65 rate in the country. And then the first matchup, they absolutely demolished the Queens press. They were scoring 1.2 points per possession, which is elite. And they also have a drastic height advantage. Now, it's not like Gulf Coast has any massive height themselves. They're 239th in effective height. But Queens is 348th. This is a bottom 20 team in height in the entire country. And Andre Ware scored 22 points in 23 minutes for Gulf Coast before he fouled out in the first matchup. So not only do they have elite shooting, they're 1/10 in three-point percentage, and they take the 32nd most threes in the country, but that height advantage they have inside is basically an advantage any team's going to have against Queens. And they already exploited it once. Unfortunately, the foul out just occurred, but you can get them +3 on a neutral floor. Makes a lot of sense for me with the team that is power rated higher by almost 30 spots per KenPom. Last game, we will get a little bit greasy here with Idaho State taking on Northern Colorado, essentially the same record. We're talking about two pretty greasy teams. But when you look at power ratings here, Northern Colorado 218th, Idaho State 238th. And there's some couple advantages that make Northern Colorado a pretty solid matchup advantage over Idaho State. The spread is 5.5. We'll be laying that number. No issues with it whatsoever. Northern Colorado, much better team on offense. And I think the X factor in the game here is going to be three-point shooting. Northern Colorado ranks 49th in three-point percentage, which is a pretty strong number for a team, you know, ranked outside the top 200 in overall power rankings. And then Idaho State just struggles to score really everywhere. 221st in overall offensive efficiency, outside the top 140 in two-point percentage and three-point percentage. It's not like Northern Colorado has any sort of defensive prowess, but the lack of ability to score for Idaho State on the other side is something that I think is a factor here. These teams did already play. And one thing that was interesting is Idaho State beat Northern Colorado. It was an overtime game. The score was 90-83. But Shot Quality actually pegged this as a Northern Colorado win by a score of 93-88. You'll see if you look at this profile, Northern Colorado is a team actually due for some positive regression. We think they see it here and will back them -5.5. That'll do it for us today. Really fun slate. A lot of good games. The A-Sun tipping off their conference tournament. Can't wait for that. Let me know in the comments what you think about these plays or any of the other games on the board. If you'd like to reach out, I'm at Matt_Kajeski. Always willing to chop it up there. We'll be back every day this week talking college basketball bets. Make sure to check that out. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.